So we're almost there. We just need to take care of our register component now. So let's head back to VS Code. And first of all, let's start off in our user store. So we'll head back to our user store. And of course, we need a method to actually register our users. So inside the user store, we'll add a method called register. And this is going to be an async method. And we'll pass in our credentials as a property, which is going to be of type user form values, the interface we created earlier on. And this is going to be remarkably similar to the login method. So to be slightly lazy in this lesson, we're going to do a bit of copying and pasting. I'm just going to take all of the code, in fact, in the login method and just paste it inside the register method. And the only thing we need to change inside here is the call to the agent account register method. We're still going to set our token in the common store. We're still going to set our user objects, and we're still going to push them to the activities after they've successfully logged in. And then, of course, we're going to close the modal because we're going to put our register form inside a modal as well. And then what we can do is we can go back to Solution Explorer, and inside our users folder, let's create another new file, and we'll call this registerform.tsx. Now we're going to engage lazy mode once again, so I'm just going to copy my login form in its entirety and just paste this into the register form. It's going to be very similar, but slightly bigger because we're going to take a couple of extra properties from the user or extra fields and send them up to our API. So let's take a look at what we need to change. Well, we need to change login form to register form. We still need our user store. The initial values, we're going to add a couple of fields here. We're going to add the display name, which is going to be an empty string, and also our username, again, an empty string. Instead of the user store.login, we're going to use the register method. And we'll come back and deal with the errors soon. But for now, we'll just leave this as it is, or as we had for our login form. For the header, we'll change this to sign up to reactivities. And what we'll do, we'll just copy the text input down a couple of times here. And the first one will be for our display name. And we'll give it a placeholder of display name. And we'll add the username next and say username and give it a placeholder of username. Now what we'll also do with our register form is we'll actually add validation here because we don't want to send up empty objects to our API. We do have validation on the API, but we'll also duplicate that validation on the client as well to save the trip to the API if they haven't filled out the form correctly. So what we'll do just below the onSubmit here inside the formic tag is we'll directly add our validation schema. And this means we need to bring in yup into our component here as well. So we'll import asterisk as yup from yup. And in the validation schema, we'll say equals, open curly brackets, and then we'll say yup.object, open parentheses, more curly brackets, and inside here we can specify how we want to validate our fields. So we'll specify the display name. And this is going to be a yup.string, and we're going to specify required, and we'll add a comma, just copy this down 3 more times, and we'll do the same for username, we'll do the same for email, and we'll do the same for password. And for the email, we'll just add an additional requirement, and that this needs to be a type of email. For the email, of course. And what we can also do then is for the render props that we're passing down to our form, we can also go and get the isValid flag, and we can get the dirty flag as well, and check these and make sure the button is disabled if either of these flags are false. So what we'll do, we'll come down to our button, and we'll add a disabled property, and we'll check to see if the form is valid. So we'll add the not operator and is valid, or it's not dirty. And we'll add a third condition and check to see if we're submitting. And let's just bring the rest of these down. And of course, we're going to change the content here from login to register. And then all we need to do is head across to our home page once again. and we'll change our H1 tags here, and we'll specify register form. And we should be good to go and test. So let's take a look. And I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page once again. I'll click on register. We can see our registration form. We've got our button that's disabled. Let's just open up the console as well at the same time. Make sure there's no warnings that we've missed inside here, just to go and test this form. Now we'll test a happy path first of all. We'll add a display name of test, a username of test, and we'll say test@test.com with a valid password. And we'll press return. We register, we load our activities, and we're taken to the app, and we can see our display name on the right hand side there. And let's just make sure we can refresh the page and everything's good. And that looks good to me. And we're not seeing any warnings in our console either, which is good. So what about the unhappy path then? What happens if we register a user with a duplicate username or a password that is too weak? Well, let's take a look. So I'll just say test again, and we know we've just created a user called test, and we'll say test@test.com, and I'll just put a weak password in, and if we click register, aha! Well, of course, we get the string of text telling us we've got an invalid email or password. Now, we've not dealt with handling validation errors from the API in our register form yet, and what we'll do is take a look at how we can handle these next.